When the leaders of China and Russia met in Uzbekistan, it was the first time that President Xi Jinping had traveled outside of his country since the start of the pandemic. I'm James Chau, and this is my conversation with Zhao Long, a senior fellow at the Shanghai Institute for International Studies. Zhao Long, thanks very much for being with us. We know that the Russian and Chinese leaders have met for the first time since the Beijing Olympics. And since that time, we've not only had the Ukraine invasion, but we've also had a spike in tensions around Taiwan following the visit by Nancy Pelosi. How much of these two events shape the dialogue that they've had today?
Well, I think in general, the development of Sino-Russian relations was mainly driven by indigenous power and reflects the independent value. But to some extent, of course, the major changes in the international and regional landscape are inevitably reflected in the agenda of mutual dialogue. From a current perspective, the Russian-Ukraine conflict and the Taiwan question become the most, important external factors. You may have noticed during the leaders' meeting, they have made important reassurance, in my opinion, to each other, which is working together in extending the strong support to each other on issues concerning their respective core interests. I think this is the most important consensus that reached during this meeting. I think after years of practice, non-alliance, non-confrontation, and non-targeting on any third party already become the golden rule, in my opinion, for Russia-China relations. These kind of relations represent the coordination, the defense against, the unilateralism, the sanctions, the provocations from the United States and other countries, rather than formulation of so-called united anti-West front.
I want to unpack that a little further, but before that, how would you briefly summarize the outcome of this meeting? If you were to come out with, say, one major point, what would that be?
Well, the important outcome from the meeting was, I think, the further promotion of strategic coordination, by strengthening high-level dialogue, by comparing notes on major global and regional issues, by deepening bilateral cooperation in trade, energy, agriculture, and etc. I think this meeting is showing that both Russia and China stand for the more equitable and reasonable international order, opposing so-called hegemonism, unilateralism, and opposing the international rules made by very few countries.
Well, as you said, they appear to be allied in their opposition to unilateralism in the world today, but are they necessarily allies themselves, particularly at a time when Russia is at war in Ukraine?
Well, I think there's no necessity for China and Russia to formulating any kind of coalition or ally. And also, I think it's quite important that Russia is an important partner for China, but it's mainly focused on how to use this kind of a partnership to maintain the multipolarization, the economic globalization, and the post-war international system. It does not mean that China is using Russia or using the Sino-Russian partnership to counterbalance or to formulate any kind of quasi-alliance or military coalition against the West.